Okay, looks like we're right on time. We can get started then. So hello, my name is Bill Malarkey, and I'm a partner in the water practice group of Roland Berger. We're a global management consulting firm, and our team advises not only players who provide products and services across the water industry, but we also support clients from both industry and government in minimizing their water risk and developing comprehensive water strategies. It's great to welcome all of you to this World Water Week. We've all seen how the shift in emphasis to climate adaptation in recent years has put water front and center in the discussion. And since this is where nearly all the climate impacts are being felt. So it's not just, as you know, when we talk about water, it's not just a question of ensuring drinking water availability, but water critically impacts and is impacted by the production of literally every product and commodity, from food and clothing to semiconductors and EV batteries. And the supply of water to both industrial and agricultural production is often now in increasing competition with the water supplies for villages and urban areas. What quickly becomes clear when you look at it is that our water challenges, whether at the global, national, or the river basin level, can't really be solved without extensive collaboration among a range of stakeholders. And that's why today's subject, we believe, is so important, because we're going to explore thinking outside the fence, maximizing benefits through collaborative action. And our focus today is going to be on Mexico and Latin America more broadly. Today, we've brought together a panel of leaders who represent a great cross-section of those different stakeholders who have some real insights and experiences to share. And I'll let each of them introduce herself now.
So yes, hello everyone, Nathalie Dorfliger speaking from Danone, and I am in charge of the watershed science and stewardship at a global level, and bringing all my support with my team to local team in Mexico, specifically here for water stewardship activities with local stakeholders.
Great.
Hello, maybe I go next. Thank you very much for the honor of being on that amazing fully women panel. It's not that often that it happens, and it's a lot of outstanding women. So I'm very honored to be part of that discussion today. I'm Anaïs Julien. I'm a senior investment officer at IFC. I'm part of the global water team. I transitioned a few months ago. Before that, I was covering water, waste management, and urban infrastructure for Latin America. So working a lot in Mexico and across the region. Of course, as you know, IFC is member of the World Bank. So I will take advantage of this session to also talk a little bit about what other members of the World Bank group do, because collaboration is also for us within the group, and how we cover different aspects with the different leveraging the different capabilities of each of the group, but also mentioning that IFC footprint extend the private sector as well as subnational entities and utilities. And so we work on the water sector, which is a very strategic sector for us for all the reasons that you already mentioned. We really try to find synergies and to build bridges between those different activities that we have. So looking forward to the further discussion.
Thanks.
Hi, well, I will go next. Thank you very much, Phil, and Lauren, for inviting me on this panel. I'm Victoria Edwards. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fido Tech. We're an AI tech company with a bold but simple mission, which is to be here to help create a world without water scarcity. And to do that, we're a big believer in collaborative action with corporates and a corporate water stewardship program as a way of accelerating building capacity and water resilience in very stressed watersheds. And so here to talk about some of our projects that we've been doing with Microsoft and others in Mexico.
Okay.
I can go next.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Alejandra Lopez, and I am the Program Director for Water and Climate for the Nature Conservancy in Mexico. The Nature Conservancy, or TNC, is the largest conservation nonprofit globally dedicated to protecting the water, lands, and oceans upon which all life depends. And here in Mexico, I have the pleasure of leading our water and climate portfolio, which are increasingly very related, of course, due to the climate crisis. So I'm happy to join this panel to talk about nature-based solutions and the role of nature-based solutions and biodiversity protection and conservation work to ensure water resilience.
Great, thanks. And Anna?
Thank you. Thank you, Bill, for inviting me to this panel. I'm so excited to share some activities that we do. My name is Ana Laura Elizondo, and I'm based in Monterrey, Mexico. I work as head of water security projects for FEMSA Foundation. FEMSA is a company that creates economic and social value through companies and institutions and strives to be the best employer and neighbor in the community where we operate. And as the foundation of FEMSA, our mission is to cultivate prosperity in Latin America based in 4 principles, which is science-based solutions, monitoring and evaluation, community engagement, and of course, collective action. So I'm so glad to be in this panel to talk about more about this. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, welcome to all of you. It's a great group. So then thank you all for being a part of this today. So to set the scene, I'm just going to share a bit of information here about the scope and seriousness of the water situation in Mexico. So I promise we will not bombard you with slides today. But Mexico really faces some extreme risk of water scarcity today. And all the projections have this increasing and worsening by 2050. You can see the red here is the areas of extreme risk. The water demand is also increasing at the same time due to population growth, but also, especially in the north, that's the manufacturing sector. And with reshoring and nearshoring, there's great for the economy, but you're also expecting a lot more water demand, especially in the most stressed areas. So next. And if you just look at it in terms of municipal supply, so 6 out of every 10, there's nearly 2,500 water utilities in Mexico. 6 out of 10 of those are facing severe to exceptional drought during the course of this summer. And several have already reported facing day 0, which is defined as the day when there's not enough water to supply the needs of the city. So this is really starting to have actual concrete impact on people's lives in those areas. And finally, the result of this then is that companies are coming under increased scrutiny, although most of the water usage is in agriculture and in municipal uses. Industry is a smaller percentage of that, but companies are very high profile. So there's been a lot of scrutiny, a lot of protests, some name and shame work that goes on about, especially for those who are seen as drawing too much water in an operation. This is a very real risk then for the company's reputations and also their operations. Can they continue to operate there? So that kind of gives you a bit of the background of what companies are facing there. And I'll give sort of the kickoff question here to Natalie. So Natalie, Danone has more than 30 operation sites in Mexico, and mostly in the water sector. And as we've seen, there's a real water scarcity issue in the country. So how are water risks showing up in your business already?
Yeah, thank you for these questions. As you say, yes, we have more than 30 operation sites in the water sector with our brand Bonafont, and with jugs, delivery jugs at home, and also PET bottles as well. And what we see, in fact, and it's not just the last years, but it's several years ago already, that the impact of this water scarcity, first of all, is in the vicinity of our factory where we operate. I mean, the local communities or in some neighborhoods of cities, such as in Monterrey, in Valle de Mexico. And what we see even last year or even this year, I mean, we had consequently some exchange with local government, local authorities, and to be able to supply and supply with raw water from a truck in some directly in some local neighborhoods. Because the people didn't have any water. I mean, there was shortage on the water supply, in the municipal water supply. So this is one of the consequences. And what we are convinced is, okay, you talk about reputation risk as well, or that we can be named saying that we are using water as an industry. But in fact, what we are convinced is that solution, and it's under our responsibility as a company to bring some solution and to design some solution through collaborative activities. This is we have a role to play in this, and it's what we are doing, and through different projects, locally water access. But what I explained in the different cities, I mean, it was more emergency situations like crisis mode, but we need to develop long-term activities with collaborative through different network-based solutions, different solutions. Yeah.
Okay. And so aside from the emergency response, the reactive sounds like you also have an overall strategy for dealing with this level of risk in the market. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. In fact, what we do, I mean, we have selected and identified with the tools that have been developed by WWF how to identify where to prioritize our actions of watershed preservation or water stewardship. And so we identified 16 watersheds where we need to concentrate, and started this type of actions. This is one thing. And we also make a screening regarding the social issues, and not only the water risk and on the physical or scarcity, but also on the social one. And in this way, we set up, and we update regularly, but we set up a social development program regarding not only water, but one of the components is water.
Okay. And sure, there's an overall Danone program too, so Danone Impact, right? So is that sort of embedded in the overall corporate?
Yeah, exactly. It's make a yeah, sure. I mean, the program and the general activities that we are doing in terms of water stewardship is embedded in the strategy of Danone, of the Danone, of the impact journey strategy of the sustainability. And one KPI regarding the nature is about the water. And so our strategy regarding the watershed preservation is to set up actions mainly of protections regarding the nature-based solutions, and involving local communities or local stakeholders as well.
Okay.
I can develop later on that. I don't know.
So Anna, Natalie mentioned a number of examples of regional collaboration that she's involved with. At FEMSA, you're also sort of coming at this with a food and beverage background. What are the challenges and opportunities for collective action that you've seen out there?
Yes, thank you, Bill. There are opportunities, I think. I mean, water stress is a reality, and we need to start gathering and having these conversations and do something. So we have been actually for 15 years making partnership with the IDB, Inter-American Development Bank, with the Nature Conservancy, us FEMSA Foundation, through the Latin America Water Founds Alliance. And we have now 26 water founds in Latin America. And I think these are definitely very good platforms for collective actions, where can different actors and stakeholders sit and, based through science, take decisions and plan to have a strategic plan, an IDRIC plan, to have projects very aligned through one vision, which through the water founds, it's water security, looking for water security in the cities and in the region. So I think this is a powerful tool that we can use for collective action to actually have an impact.
Mhm. It sounds like there's a lot of players who are touched by all these challenges that you're looking to address. So what's the relevant part there? So where you have multi-sector participation, and what roles do you see the different parties playing there when you do bring them in?
Uh, I think every stakeholder has a part of it. It's very important, the alliance through private and public sector, because we know that one alone cannot do everything. So we need to come together and work together, and then to add up the NGOs and the academia to support everything that we do, and to have like science-based information, data to take decisions. That's also something really, really relevant for that, really partnerships and everything to move forward. So I think we all have a part, a very important role in really making a difference or an impact.
Yeah, no doubt. And so you mentioned that working with the Nature Conservancy on some of these, Alejandra, a lot of the initiatives that Natalie and Anna were describing, they must be very dependent on the type of water governance mechanisms that are already in place at the policy level or the community level. What can you tell us about what you see there? What helps or hinders real cooperation here?
Thank you, Bill. Well, just to kind of expand a little bit of what on what Anna was sharing about the water funds, this is indeed for us a very an example of a very successful collaboration that we've been able to have for many years with the Latin American Alliance for Water Funds. And I wanted to also share some numbers to really illustrate kind of the impact of what these platforms have been able to achieve. So in the last few years, as Anna mentioned, 26 water funds were created across Latin America, from Ecuador to a couple of very successful cases here in Mexico itself, in Monterrey and in Mexico City, Dominican Republic, Colombia, etc. And this has mobilized both private and public resources to advance conservation and restoration activities in over 500,000 hectares of forested and agricultural lands. And this has benefited over 137,000 families across Latin America. So it really has been an example of mobilizing both private and public funds and bringing a whole set of different stakeholders together through a common cause. And I think so the water funds have been one cooperation mechanism that has worked in the region. And then the other sort of point that I wanted to bring to the discussion there is that, as you mentioned, the governance structure is very important. We have very different governance structures across Latin America. But when we have these platforms that are bringing both public and private sector stakeholders together, we have been able to work across different governance structures and realities, because we are all kind of facing the same challenges. And one thing that I think has been very helpful in that sense is to take the watershed management approach. So we are not convening actors necessarily based on how they are divided in terms of geopolitical lines, but the watershed is relevant to everyone who's depending on it. So I think that is a very powerful convening factor.
For sure. And it sounds like water reuse and nature-based solutions will have a huge role to play in meeting these challenges. And so TNC is doing a lot to support these efforts in the countries you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I think this is one of the areas that we need to continue to invest more and more in, because as we know, water is not an infinite resource, and we keep, especially when we look at cities, need for water, we keep looking at new sources, but there aren't an infinite amount of new sources. So water reuse is really important. And we have done some successful collaborations in cities in the northern part of the country, also mobilizing funds from private donors to increase, for example, wastewater treatment plants capacity to through nature-based solutions, which, as we know, is a lot more cost-effective, for example, to work on rehabilitating wetlands adjacent to a wastewater treatment plant, which is what we did in the northern Mexico-US border, which is a lot more cost-effective than, for example, investing in only gray infrastructure.
Right. Makes sense. So Anais, a lot of talk about funding here. So, and most people have obviously heard of the World Bank, but IFC may be less familiar. So can you tell us a bit about how the World Bank Group and IFC in particular are working with all the various stakeholders across the water ecosystem or the water world to foster more sustainable water management?
Yeah, sure. And first, stressing the fact that this issue, and particularly in Mexico, linked to the, that might stand in the way of the nearshoring is very important for us at IFC. As I mentioned, we are the private arm of the World Bank, or we are known as the private arm of the World Bank. And our role, our mission, our mandate is to foster sustainable economic development, to help alleviate poverty and improve people's life. So really, economic development made in a sustainable way is really at the core of what we do. And in Mexico, especially in the northern state, as you mentioned in your introduction, we're faced with this situation where we have this trend that is generating tremendous growth. $29 billion investment, foreign investment in the first half of 2023 only. We see a lot of new industrial parks popping up. So it's really, really exciting and generating a lot of growth and jobs. But at the same time, it is increasing the water stress and that crisis. The Nature Conservancy mentioned reuse. Reuse is definitely something that we work a lot on, and as you mentioned, it's along the value chain, right? Because the first thing you need to enable reuse is a good regulation, is a regulation that enables it. That is more, as I mentioned, that is more something that the World Bank, so our colleagues at IBRD are dealing with. But this is something where we really collaborate and exchange in order to be able to champion regulation that will enable private sector to take on these kind of projects. And I think reuse is really one of those subsector where collaboration is key, right? Because it's about the value chain, right? It's about where do we have the water. The municipality, utility has to figure out how to fund, how to invest in those plants or in those addition in order to do the reuse. And then they need to understand who will be the off-taker, what is the water right along that value chain, etc. So really, you have to put all these pieces of the puzzle together. And so that's where IFC, so as I said, we work upstream at the government level to try to enable and to push for this kind of regulation at the national and at the federal and at the state level. We work with utilities to help them increase efficiency, understand, build like water supply strategy, and understand what would be the role of something like reuse, of something like desalination, something like reduction of water loss would have to, how all these different elements can play a role, and which one of those can be financed. We work on providing advisory to develop PPPs, public-private partnership. We actually, not long ago, developed a desalination plant that had two components, the desalination plant as well as loss reduction within the PPP in Los Cabos, in Mexico. And also general capacity building with the utility. something else that we do, we work directly with industries, and we have a team, an entire team here in Washington, D.C., but also people scattered around the world working on how to make industries more efficient, energy, etc. But of course, water is a very important part of the work that they do. In Mexico, they're working a lot with the pharma industry, with the textile apparel industry, as well as with dairies, working on how to recycle water, have more efficient processes, etc. And that goes hand in hand with another product that we have, which is green certification for industrial parks and for buildings. And that again is a lot about collaboration, because you have to work with the developers, you have to work with with the person that are eventually going to use those spaces in industrial parks, and create the incentives so that there is demand. And so we do a lot of that. And in Mexico, for example, as of today, we have more than 800 projects that have been certified with EDGE certification. And this certification is also a way to, and you mentioned it in the beginning, to bring in finance, right? At the end of the day, you also have to generate interest and to generate appetite in the finance community to finance all those projects and to finance this. The gap in terms of investment in water is globally in the trillions of dollars, right? Yep. So we cannot expect the public sector or development institutions to fill in that gap. It's really important to mobilize private sector as industries, but also financiers, funds, institutional investors, banks, etc., toward those. In 2022, IFC published the Blue Finance Guidelines, and we've been extending this through local banks around the globe, but also in LAC, in Latin America. There is a good example is what we did in Ecuador, where we extended a $200 million loan. That is blue loan, that is focused so that the bank, when they deploy this loan, has to focus on fostering efficient and sustainable water practice, and that's focused on the shrimp industry there in Ecuador, which is very important, and which consumes. It's a little known fact, but this kind of industry consumes a lot of water. So you can incentivize those behaviors through channeling financing toward those projects. So that's a lot of different things, but we kind of try to coordinate and act along the entire value chain.
So it depends a lot on the structure of the policy and governance, but also a lot on the structure of the actual the deals you're putting together here too, to get the right incentives.
Absolutely. And another tool, for example, that we implemented, for example, in Brazil. So Anna mentioned the importance of reuse and how reuse is a source of water that you don't know about, you kind of forget about, and it's just right there, and it's like continuous. Another one is water loss, right? So we do work a lot with water utilities on reducing water loss, giving them technical assistance, helping them set up plans, but also, of course, the financing. And one very powerful instrument that we implemented in Brazil in order to align those incentives is sustainability-linked finance, which is a loan where when you reach certain operational targets or certain KPIs, you get a discount on your rate. We did it with Corsan in Brazil, where they would get a discount on their rate if they manage to lower their water loss below 35%, which seems high, but it's kind of, they still have quite a lot of work to get there.
Way to go, yeah.
And so, as I mentioned in the beginning, right, and within the World Bank, collaboration is also collaboration within the World Bank. Sometimes this collaboration, what we see in our clients, it's also within the same clients, right? And I'm very happy to see Danone here, FEMSA, which are entities that we know that we work with in some part of the world. And kind of aligning incentives between the sustainability department, the operation department, and the finance department. And these kind of tools where suddenly the finance guys have an interest in the operational guy reducing their water loss because then they get a discount on their rate is a very powerful tool also to align within our clients the incentives for these sustainable goals.
Okay, so new models, that's a good switch over here too. So Victoria, you're kind of a unique representative here in that you're leading a tech player. And we've heard a lot of talk about the need, if you're going to address these solutions, about data and about partnership and about water loss reduction as well. So are these the things that were kind of driving you as you went out to look to create an alternative model for water tech adoption in this segment?
Yeah, absolutely, because we need to act. You know, the time is now. I was at a conference last week, and our progress on the SDG 6 goals may be worse than when we started by the time we reach 2030. And I'm a big believer that tech should be in the hands of the many, not the few. And we need to move the dial. So we need to do it at scale and at speed, but with transparency and auditability. We need to make an impact that is verified, a verified outcome. So our AI works a lot starts with water loss, water security, that across the whole NRW space, then also empowering utilities and corporations in that watershed to come together to look at what water needs there are and how we create long-term water resilience. We are sitting here where day zero is a reality. It's been a reality for a number of years. I am so pleased that the corporates are taking the lead, and it is the corporations that are taking the lead, that have been bold and have said it's corporate water stewardship. It's not actually been regulation that's driving this. And we said, because utilities were struggling to be able to fund projects, either it's complex to get finance, they can't put up their water rates, nobody values water, everybody moans about their energy bills. I mean, if I had a choice between paying my water bill and my energy bill, I'd pay my water bill, because you can put on a jumper, but you can't live without water. And we seem to have woken up to this reality that water is finite, that water, yet we sit, when I go to the water industry conferences, not like the one here, you know, it's all about, well, my pipe's bigger than your pipe and you've got to buy this, and it's pointy elbows and commercially proprietary. And I'm saying we haven't solved the problem. We sit in an industry that loses, and it's difficult to find these leaks, 30, 40, 50, 60% of a product they produce. Nobody on this panel will accept that from their industry. Why are we doing the same? One, because it's difficult. Two, because the utilities don't have a finance mechanism. And three, do we need a lot of skilled resource to do that? So as an outsider to the water industry 5 years ago, we looked at this and said, how can we solve the problems? The three main problems: financing and CapEx requirements. Well, let's try and provide a model that works with a corporation that wants to hit their water stewardship goals to do that. Trained labor, skilled engineers. How can we reduce that through the use of AI, working with the human together to get to the right outcome, to find and stop non-revenue water? And we think we've done that. And three is about talking about the IFC, and we've done some work with the IFC, thank you, in India, is about, you've got to, in order to make an impact and carry all stakeholders, you've got to publish your data. It's got to be independently audited. It's got to be local to where it is needed, and it has to be long-term. So these projects have to be at scale, they have to be long-term, and they have to be joined together. So the projects that we're doing in Mexico should be joined with all the other projects in the watershed to create a whole model, a playbook that links wastewater, clean water, stormwater, aquifer recharge, ag tech, river abstraction, and we need to do it at scale. And I don't believe that regulation will get us there fast enough. I think we need to look at working with the corporations to say, how can we make an impact at scale that is long-term, that is resilient, that delivers water resilience? So this bias for action, I think transparent auditability, so the work that Limnitech and Blue Risk and other people do to audit is really important, so we can stand behind the impact that we're making, and to make sure that that technology then is given to deliver capacity in the watershed and to the communities where it's needed. So it's now about getting a move on, because we've seen, as you know, since 2010, 500% increase in water-related conflicts. Wherever we face 1 month of water stress, the effect on the economy or water conflicts is a 6% reduction in GDP. I mean, these are figures out from the UN and the World Economic Forum. It is not just something shall we think about. Water is where it's at. And we need the brightest talent. We need the most clever collaborative models. And we need to, it's all right talking, we need to have this bias for action. And we need to prove that our action has been delivered, and what impact does it make? And that's really where we come at it from a tech point of view.
And when you look at it in terms of collaboration, what do you picture? What's your view on collaboration as a term there?
Well, I knew you were going to ask that question, Bill. Collaboration as a term is often thrown away, isn't it? It's obviously, 5 years ago, everything with IoT, then suddenly everybody said everything with AI, and so now everybody's collaborating. And I don't like the term because it's got to be, I much prefer the term collective action, because we need to start acting. And like we're doing in our project, the projects in Mexico and in Colorado with Water United, a big collaboration of corporations and technology and utilities and communities. So collaboration is a bit easy. It's a bit coffee morning-ish now, isn't it? We've got to stand behind our results. Collective action.
It's collective action with the underline on action.
It's a bias for action. Let's just get on with it, prove what we're doing, involve all the stakeholders, make sure that that data is shared, peer reviewed. I don't see much peer review in the water industry. I'd love academic rigor. I think we should do more of that. Because that makes sure, whilst we're missing a real global standard, the VWBA's come on a really long way, and the new revision is going to make a huge difference. But until there's that global accepted standard, we have to have saying, is this true? Is this real? Is it going to make a difference? Because we don't have time to keep trialing and failing. We've just got to get on with it, come together with action, get it verified, and go at scale. And I think this is where we're sitting, that pivotal point now.
Okay. Great. So Anna and Natalie, so we heard from Anais, we also from Victoria, is like the corporates are often out in the lead. They're not waiting for a regulation to make them do something. They're actually going out, seeing the problem and helping to be part of the solution on that. So could you give us some really sort of concrete examples about projects that you've done that went well, that went particularly well, whether in Mexico or somewhere else in Latin America?
Yeah, sure. I can say that in Mexico, Danone, I mean, first of all, I mean, we set up an action plan to understand where to prioritize and so on. But after, when you have to start it, the question is what type? Okay, you select a natural-based solution with who we want to do it. So we try to say, okay, how we can work with others, and so but it takes time. It takes a long time. So starting, yes, to try to understand how we can identify who can be able to understand what we were looking for, the type of collaborative actions with local communities, how we can identify where, and so we work and we exchange about that with Waterplan, who is at the Stockholm Water Week as well, and they identify for us some partners, and one example in Toluca, I mean, they identified Aquasegura, who is working in the implementation some project, and they were able to get in touch with some local communities and association or NGO foundations who have a leadership in the sustainability development locally in Toluca with the local communities. And so modestly, okay, we started with one first project. It will be several years, but with forest management actions, it's in the recharge area, so it's kind of replenishment project, but it will have also a part with educations to bring awareness, and the idea is to go after that at the scale up and to address larger part of hectares and with a larger number of communities. So this is one example. Another example, which we can also say, okay, we are in contact with different companies. I mean, there is some initiatives such as the Alliance for Charco Bendito in Guadalajara, and we are in contact with them. We exchanged during several meetings, and we will be part of this alliance. And it's also a good opportunity to see if there is in a watershed where you operate, there is already an initiative that has been taken by some others. Here in this case, it's by the beverage industry environmental roundtable with Diageo, AB InBev, Jacob, and so on. This is a good opportunity to not to do it just, we want to do our Danone project, but to jump into some others. And I think it's, yes, recognizing that there is the collective leadership that can be from other companies that already set up things, and or that you need to find in the ground which NGO has a leadership in contact with the local community and can start to initiate things. It's maybe not enough, but it's a one component, and also it's get through the education of local community to take their responsibility. They are part of the solution, and it's just not the business of one business of one.
And Bill, I've just seen a question in here about sustained services related to utility takes time, usually beyond the project cycle, and that's a really important point. So even though, I mean, the work that FIDO and Microsoft have done in Mexico, in Carretera, all our projects worldwide are 10 years, and that's really important because you're absolutely right, come to ask the question, you need to end up leaving capacity. Now, even though we will have done a lot of, millions and millions of cubic meters of water replenishment through the project, I mean, huge numbers, it's no point if then it just stops. So you're absolutely right. The whole systems thinking. So part of it is creating the technology that can leave capacity to the local community, to the municipality, to give them knowledge, not just to keep doing the same, but having built that knowledge of what their water network looks like, how it behaves, how it will behave, so that when the project should have an ongoing goals, but the ultimate goal is that water resilience that you have created is maintained, and they have that self-water resilience. And I think everything should have that project, the project should be seen through that lens. Can it be taken forward so that we don't get into this cycle? So this very much by applying systems approaches, and how does it impact on somebody else? And that's why you can't do these projects in silos. You can't just do clean water network or storm water or nature-based work, because they are all interlinked. And that's what we're working on with part of Water United, with Microsoft and Pepsi and others, is building out that AI model to say, how do they all interconnect? How does water reuse play its part? Because if you can't leave something behind and it's just for short term, we're not doing our job. And that's something that I think we're all starting to resilience. So that systems approach, long-term projects, capacity building to deliver that long-term water resilience is really what it's about.
Yes, sure. And it's why it's necessary to have a kind of business case model to develop and to see, okay, it's just not a matter of preservation, but it's if there is no value for or benefit, let's say, for the livelihood of the people who are involved, I mean, it will not stay for a long time. So it's all this type of things to develop. Yeah.
So Anna, how do you ensure in the projects that the FEMSA Foundation is involved in, how do you ensure that there's the long-term ongoing benefit, like after the first phase is over? How do you ensure that going forward?
We have different projects and programs. So for example, we have one for WASH, water access and sanitation and hygiene, where our bet is in innovative through innovation through social arts and behavioral change. We have to complement our programs also in step out of the box and include the community, their voices, and engage with them, for them also to be part of the process and to also take care of the infrastructure and the maintenance, the operation. And for example, in this project, which is Lazos de Agua, we also do that in collective action with IDB, with Coca-Cola Foundation, and One Drop Foundation. And also we engage with the local governments so they can also provide the service in the long term, but with the community. And we have proved that with the component of behavioral change through social arts, we have been able to increase the payment of the tariff, which is used to
It then
long
funds the network.
prolong
Yeah.
exactly the maintenance. So that's one of the examples that I can give you about sustainability in a program. But we definitely have more, but I don't want to take too much time.
Sure, that's okay. So, so Alejandra, when we spoke earlier, there's a lot going on. There's some really good things. Is it all going to be enough? We heard Victoria say we're actually backsliding on some of the SDGs. What can stakeholders do to advance water stewardship efforts beyond replenishment? Most of what we've talked about is either conserving, like stopping water loss, or replenishment. What can be done beyond that to push things forward?
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill, for this question. Thank you, because it's one of the things that we've been really working with our both public and private partners to expand our thinking and our doing beyond replenishment into, projects that are more comprehensive. We are now, there's a lot of discussion and a lot of energy, I think, focused on biodiversity protection, biodiversity goals, obviously in the context of Kunming Montreal, but we need to move into action. So I think we are seeing a lot of interest in projects that are, more thorough, incorporating not only water replenishment or water stewardship, but also biodiversity protection, governance mechanisms. And I think as Natalie was saying earlier, also, sustainable livelihoods is a big component of what's interesting. And, sometimes it sounds like it's a lot to ask. It's a very complex mix of things because we want to do all of this, replenishment plus biodiversity protection, plus, gender equality and inclusion of indigenous peoples and local communities. It's a lot, but really when we look at it, at the Nature Conservancy, we have one of our focus areas is indigenous peoples and local communities led conservation, because really that is one of our work streams that hits all those boxes and actually delivers the highest conservation results, because local communities and indigenous populations are the stewards of a lot of the world's biodiversity, as we know, and water resources. So there is a lot more work to do there. And I am really hoping that the energy and interest that we are seeing now really translates into that. And another point I wanted to bring to the discussion, if I may, is that you asked a question earlier about how do we sustain these efforts? How do we make sure that projects are not just, there for a period of time? Victoria
You go
was
away
saying
and they fall over. Yeah.
Exactly. And we
Right.
need to be looking at the policy solutions as well. And because we have a focus on Mexico for this discussion, we do have to talk about the political context that we are in at the moment. There will be a new administration coming into office very soon, in a few weeks. And, the president-elect campaign on reforming the national water law. And, it's too early to tell what that might look like. But there seems to be finally the political will to make big scale policy changes in that area, which I think no matter where you stand, a lot of people agree that change is needed on the policy and regulation in national water. In fact, the Supreme Court mandated Congress to reform the national water law a few years ago, and they have not been able to reach an agreement. For different reasons, we are well overdue for a new national water law. So I think it's very important for all of us to keep in mind that, there is this energy, there is this pending issue, and hopefully, everything that we are wanting to make sure that it's there in that agenda nature-based solutions. Obviously, I'm speaking from our side, nature-based solutions and watershed management, and really pushing water management to take an environmental perspective, because that's how it works. It's not just about great infrastructure and water allocation based on economic activity needs, but really ecosystemic preservation. So that is some of the things that we are hoping to see in this new regulation, hopefully.
No, that's great. And so and I
Yeah, and maybe I was
gonna say,
actually
what impact does that have for you guys? I mean, as you move away from gray infrastructure, does it become harder to make it a financeable project?
So,
or financeable
yeah, so maybe first on this regulation, I agree, regulation is very important. I hear also Victoria saying that the industry cannot wait, the crisis cannot wait, which is also true. But as I mentioned, sometimes regulation actually stands in the way of those projects, like such as reuse that we're trying to push around the world, and in some geographies, including Mexico, the regulation and the lack of clarity sometimes impede private sector to take up on those projects. So it is also important in parallel, of course, not stop and wait for the regulation, but in parallel to also work on those topics. And we haven't discussed at all about agriculture. You mentioned at the beginning of the panel that agriculture was actually the greatest consumer of water globally, in Mexico as well. And regulation in this matter is very important. Agriculture globally benefits from a huge subsidies when it comes to water that has to be looked at. Cost reflective tariffs and tariffs that reflect the value of water are, as Victoria mentioned, this is not something that's implemented anywhere in the world really, or in very few places. And this is also something that has to be looked at. And transparency of water rights. And you mentioned the finance. I think that so the cost like in IFC, we advocate a lot for tariff reform and sector reform that includes better cost reflective tariffs, because it will have the double impact of hopefully optimizing the use of water in some industries or at the user level, but also making utilities more creditworthy. Making the utilities, able to sustain their own operation and to sustain their investment plan, and then to be able to access commercial finance. So there is like a virtuous circle, right? That also includes the ability to then finance those plans. So I think that, and that is part of regulation, right? The tariff setting, etc. So I think that working on regulation is also a way to indirectly get also more finance. And to your question on moving away from maybe those big project infrastructure, I think we have to do both, right? Unfortunately, those big project reuse, desal, big irrigation initiatives,
they're all needed.
They will still be there, and they're the ones that are usually more difficult to finance because they're bigger, there are more risks. We also work on nature-based solution and trying to work on those nature positive finance and those kind of initiatives. It is a bit more difficult for an institution like IFC to work on those projects because of their size. We tend to, because of the way we operate, focus on bigger size. So one way that we access to those is through the mechanism that I mentioned previously, which is those blue loans or those green loans that we do to to local financial institutions that then have the stringent characteristic of project that they can invest. And we're slowly ramping up with biodiversity finance, which is really focused on those nature-based solutions, and that we are starting to deploy in Colombia and in other places, hopefully soon in Mexico, that will be focused on those projects.
That actually leads, we just had a question come in about how mature are we really in terms of benefits accounting for actions like that? Are there good solid measures that are well agreed for when you mentioned green financing or blue financing, that sort of thing? And I guess this would apply to projects like that Victoria's working on, or the
so
players.
if I may just
Go ahead.
that one. I'm really glad that there's some rigor. And, and the volumetric water-based, the VWBA that's come out, and the accounting is very important. And I was at a table with Blue Risk and Limitech yesterday, and we felt like we were having our homework marked, like going to the headmistress's study, right? When we would said, is this a technology that can do the volumetrics? And yes, we come through, we can follow, we give everything. And this is really important. And I know the new version is coming out because we have to make sure we don't fall into the trap of finding that everybody's planted the same tree. Water, we have to get it right. And I'm a big believer in that transparency. And these VWBA methodology and the new revision that comes out actually looks at the impact of doing a project against having not done the project as well. And I believe, so we create in our methodology, every cubic meter, every leakage event that we find has an audit trail from start to finish that can be independently verified. And why I think that's important, I think you're right, because there's an element of trust here. We have to explain the data, we have to stand behind the data. We're making impact, so let's make sure that it's independently verified and audited and everything. But also what it does, it comes back to finance. So I see the corporates very much as, with being forward thinking, being the catalyst to help that community, that utility, that municipality build a business case for the rest of their network. So if they've done a project, so we say Microsoft and FIDO have done a project, we've got that auditable data about volumetric reduction, the cost of a service, that they can then take to MDB or the IFC and say, this is our business case, and it's based on fact, and it's based on our network, which really de-risks it for the finance. And that's why I think you're quite right, Matteo, who asked this question, was really important. We have to be that transparent and that rigorous, and good results and bad. And then you can take those forward to apply them to that business case, that ROI. And that's, I think, the mechanism where this catalytic community of public-private can really start to grow, because there's a clear business case and ROI for each activity. So I think there's a lot of work still to do. I don't think there's not a global standard yet in water stewardship procurement. I know people are working on that. And I think anything that can help us make sure that we're doing it the right way, that's transparent and auditable and can scale, is something that still needs to be worked on. But there's some great work that all these people in WRI and everybody else have been putting together.
That's great. And we do have one, we're getting into the last minutes. I want to make sure I get to people's questions. There's a good one here. Since many of you operate across different countries, different catchments and basins, have you found any sort of frameworks helpful that you can use to foster collaboration in different settings? Or is it is everyone sort of unique and you have to kind of start from scratch in this?
I think what I can say, I mean, there is some framework that is help the collaboration, and because everyone is aligned, and I'm thinking about the volumetric benefit accountability, for example. I mean, that keeps framework. I mean, there is a definition of or concept of the water stewardship that is accessible for everyone through the AWS as well. So there is a way of aligning faster of what we are looking for. But anyway, after every time you are coming in one area, I mean, you have to understand what is the knowledge about the water issue. Is everyone is aligned or understand the same thing? And so it takes time anyway. I mean, it's local, it's specific. But after you can build on some expertise, some experience that everyone has. And for example, we may have some experience of water saving in agriculture, changing practices, and we may duplicate with some others. And everyone, I mean, have their own experience and can share and collaborate and go faster together in this way.
Anyone else have some experience on that? That sort of framework. It's useful in encouraging collective action, we'll call it, rather than collaboration.
Sure. I mean, for us, trust is very important to do what you say and respect the commitments that you made. Listen to your partners and ally. Learning from each other is a very powerful tool to success. And be open and flexible because challenges are everywhere, and be able to respond in different ways and innovate not only in programs, but also the way we do things is also really important and will help collective action for sure.
Okay. So Alejandra, anything from your side? You were operating in a lot of countries there, so.
Yeah, I was just sharing, thank you, Ben, for this question. I was just sharing in the chat a link to more information about how the water funds as, collective action mechanisms have worked in Latin America. And I was just about to share also a link because, the model was replicated in different regions in the world, but Africa really kind of took off as a place with a lot of very successful examples of water funds as well. So I just shared some information on that on the chat. Thank you for this question.
Great. So, Anais, you're also in a lot of countries now working on these. Any commonalities or?
Well, yes, I think a commonality is really the need to manage the water cross border. And when I say cross border, it can be countries, it can be some municipalities. So like the water governance and the collaboration has to be aligned with water basins. And I think that this is something that we're pushing for, and that is still still needs some work. So when we talk about collaborative action, it's important to define this scope in order to make sure to have the right impact.
Great, thanks. I'm afraid we hit our hard time. I know people were worried, will we find enough to fill this? I think we more than did that. Thanks so much to all of you. I hope everyone that held out to the end enjoyed the conversation. I know I did. Thanks all for taking the time to be with us today. So
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
yeah, bye-bye.